A little over 4 months ago, I started development on my game House in Hand, which is a roguelike Merge 3 deck builder where you build little cities on little islands. Basic premise is that you place features like trees, rocks, mines, and towns on an island, and when you place 3 or more adjacent to each other, they combine into a bigger, fancier feature and score you points. When you score enough points, you beat the level. The game consists of runs that are a series of levels you have to beat. It's kind of like Candy Crush meets Balatro, and it's up on Steam right now, so please go wishlist it. Like I said, I started development on it about 4 months ago, so in this video I'll go over the process of taking this game from just an idea to a full game that's almost done in 4 months. I talked about this in a previous devlog, but back in July I was laid off, but it was kind of a blessing in disguise because I was super burnt out. Between the long hours of working at a startup and doing game dev on the side, I was completely overworked. So basically being forced to take a break like that allowed me to reset and rest a little bit. First I just played video games all day and relaxed, but then my creative juices kind of started flowing again. For some reason, an old game that I canceled popped back into my head. My first YouTube video ever was actually a devlog for this game, but back then, the design got really complicated and out of hand, and I didn't really have a clear vision on what the game should be, so I ended up canceling it. However, now, I had a much simpler concept in mind, and I figured I could probably make it pretty fast. There's this old mobile game that I used to be obsessed with called Triple Town. It's a simple concept where you just combine 3 features into bigger features and you try to get a high score, but I found that the chill spatial puzzle gameplay was like incredibly addictive, so I thought, what if I just did that, but then I added all the roguelike and deck building features that I originally wanted in House in Hand. I spent a week or two coming up with a quick prototype, and I was pretty pleased to find that the game was actually fun. While I was playtesting it, I would kind of just get distracted and play for a bit, and I think if you as the developer actually find your game fun, that's a pretty good sign. But just in case, I sent it to some friends, and they all agreed that the concept had promise. So I was pretty pumped about this and decided to go full steam ahead working on this game. At the end of July, I went to Ireland for 2 weeks, and I definitely wasn't going to work on the game while I was there, but when I got back, I was excited to start development up again. My goal for August was to take my fun little prototype and turn it into an actual game. I had vague ideas about roguelike features like shops and this idea of policies, but these were all just ideas. I hadn't actually built any of them and I hadn't playtested any of them, so I didn't know what would work and what wouldn't. Even though I had a fun prototype, I still had a ton to do to make it into an actual game. So I decided to spend the rest of August developing a demo that could act as a vertical slice. My idea was that the demo would give a much better idea of the parts of the game that worked and the parts that didn't. The first step was to add policies. To be honest, I kind of thought this was the biggest selling point of my game, and what would take it from a simple arcade game to like an actual full roguelike. Policies are basically my version of Balatro Jokers. They enact rules that change the scoring and other aspects of the game. I also added a ton of polish, UI, animations, and sound effects during this time. I know it seems like it's probably too early to add this stuff, but it wasn't super difficult and I didn't want the lack of polish to distract from the demo. I was afraid that if the game looked bad, the people playtesting it couldn't get past the ugly looks and actually enjoy the game. So I did spend a little bit of time on polish pretty early on. I also added an in-game tutorial, but I did it in sort of a cheesy way. In the past, I've just added tutorials to like the itch page description, but I don't know, maybe my friends are all just like super brain rotted because no matter how detailed I made the tutorial description, they just wouldn't read it and then they would come back to me and be like, I just pushed a bunch of buttons and it broke, so I quit. So I did add the tutorial in-game with pictures so that even the most brain rotted of my idiot friends could understand it. The way I did this was I basically just made a PowerPoint presentation in Canva with screenshots and stuff, and then I exported the slides as images and put them in Godot. It was actually really simple to do. The hardest part, honestly, was just making the images. I highly recommend this tutorial strategy. It worked really well, especially for like game jams and stuff like that. By the end of August, I had my vertical slice demo done, and I was ready to put it up on itch and send it to some people. So far, things were going pretty well, and September 1st I was super confident, but then when I tried to put my build on the internet, it completely broke. There were a few reasons for this. The first being that I develop primarily on Windows, and Windows is actually case insensitive, meaning that a folder with a capital name is treated the exact same as a folder with a lowercase name, and since every other operating system is case sensitive, this caused massive issues when I tried to make the build work on my Mac. The second problem was in the way I was loading resources in my code. It worked while testing, but it didn't work in the actual build. This is because of the way Godot exports resources in a build folder and the way that dir access works in an actual build. Needless to say, it was a huge pain to fix this stuff. I mean, just look at my commit history from that day. After a frankly harrowing debug session, I finally got it up on itch. I sent it to some friends and family, and the responses were overall positive. However, the game didn't quite click the way I wanted to. Everyone liked the game, but they would only do 1 or 2 runs before moving on, and no one really seemed to care too much about the policies or even the items. They'd just sort of place features and combine them until they ran out of space without interacting with the other systems at all. This made me realize that something was kind of fundamentally wrong with my design. My game currently was not very different from my inspiration game Tripletown, and the roguelike aspect and the deck building aspect were just sort of extraneous. I thought about making the policies affect the spatial puzzle aspect of the game. I had an idea for a policy where trees would randomly create a new tree adjacent to it, or a policy where it would only take 2 features to evolve, but then that new feature would be worth less points or something. As you can probably tell, this got convoluted pretty fast, and it still just wasn't really working. Finally, I realized that you could just have various levels that you have to beat, and to beat the levels you need to score a certain amount of points. This makes the points feel more impactful, and therefore the policies that increase points more impactful. I think this also makes the run concept more clear, and you have a better sense of how well you've done and how you could do better. So the rest of September was focused on this new gameplay paradigm of a series of levels that you have to beat. It required quite a bit of refactoring, and at the end of September I actually ended up going to Disney World, so I took another break from development. Disney World was amazing. The Tricycle roller coaster is one of the best experiences of my entire life. But anyway, once I was back at cold and rainy Seattle, it's time to lock in and finish development on the Run refactor. I also got the Steam page up at some point. Steam pages are way harder to make than I was anticipating. It was honestly a huge pain. You need so many images in so many different formats, and if it wasn't clear from my liberal use of online asset packs, I am not good at visuals. I definitely plan on hiring someone to help me with the various graphical assets, but for now, just ignore how bad it looks and click that little wishlist button. And while you're in the mood to click buttons, why not click subscribe and thumbs up? Maybe even the bell icon if that's still there, I don't know, and just leave a comment saying how proud of me you are. Anyways, this brings us to the present day where the game is at a really good point. I recently refactored the Island Grid Manager class to allow for variable island sizes because I think it'd be cool to have the islands get bigger as you get further in your run, but that was the last feature I wanted to add before I start balancing and playtesting. Speaking of playtesting, if you're interested in playtesting the game, there'll be a link in the description to fill out a contact form about getting involved in playtesting. There's also an artist inquiry form. I am looking for an artist for the game, so if you're an artist or you know an artist, don't hesitate to reach out. The game is getting close to completion, and I'm shooting for an end-of-year release date, but to be honest, that's probably a little too hopeful. Game dev always takes longer than you expect because of weird and stupid stuff. I imagine getting the build approved for Steam will take me a long-ass time, and I'm sure playtesting will unearth a bunch of bugs, and something else will probably crop up, so the release date is still to be decided, but the game will definitely be released soon. But yeah, that's 3 months of development on my game house in hand. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment and all that. See you next time.